morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and we're going to start a new project today, working on some hooded mergansers. It's a project that I don't have on my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be doing a pair of those. I think I'm just going to focus on the Drake for the purposes of this how-to video, because the geometry is pretty similar between the hen and the Drake. Drake's a little larger, the head is in a larger crest, etc. But the basic steps to get you there are the same. So we'll focus on the Drake. And I haven't put a series together recently because I've been working on some final approach master carvings. I do some of their carvings for some of their decoys, and I can't obviously feature those here until those decoys hit production sometime next year. So when those come out, I'll probably do a little feature on some of the carvings associated with that. For now, we're going to start on this kind of tucked head Hooded Merganser Drake. And I've got my patterns drawn, I've got my blocks cut to size, so we'll jump right into the bandsawing of the bird. And there's something also unique about mergansers in general. I normally use a hardwood insert for the bill because they're so thin and long and can be fragile. So I'm going to use a very small piece of hard holly for the bill, and I'll show you how we're going to go about that. So we'll get going on that. If you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please hit the subscribe button. That's free. Doesn't cost anything, but it does it's a show of support for what I'm putting together with my YouTube channel, which is intended to help people that want to carve decoys or get started in wildfowl carving of one sort or another. A lot of these, I focus on ducks and waterfowl normally, but a lot of these techniques can be applied to songbirds, to game birds, etc. So let's get going. Thanks for coming back. All right, I mentioned I've cut the head block to size, and the width of this particular bird is 2 1/4 inches in this tucked head position at the cheeks. So I've got 2 1/4 inch wide block. I went ahead and used my X-Acto and cut the bill apart from the head pattern. And I'm going to use this for the holly and cut these shapes on the bandsaw, cut these matching shapes in the holly, slide and epoxy this into position. There are many ways to do a bill insert like this. Some people would use a hardwood dowel and drill a hole and embed that dowel back into the head and then shape the dowel itself. You could also use a rectangular block of whatever your wood you're using to insert and cut that back into the head to embed it into the head. That makes it for a really strong joint, and then go back and carve the different woods there. This particular bird is not going to see heavy field use. If it were, I would probably embed that bill further into the head, but as it is, I just want to cut this to size, and you'll see that, slide it in position, epoxy it, and I find with all these mating surfaces, it provides a very strong joint, and the hardwood holly is a lot stronger than Tupelo would be for fragility out here. So let's get the pattern traced and get the head cut out and the bill as well. Fragility, that's a big word. I'm not sure where that came from. Anyway, you know what I mean. So I've got that traced here. Got the bill traced on this piece of holly. And this piece of holly is about the approximate width that I need. A little larger, and we can carve it down to size. So we'll go ahead and get those cut out. Okay, we're working with a very small piece of wood here, so I just want to reiterate, keep your hands away from the blade at all times. You can see I've got a hand hold there, and I'm just beginning to notch out that area where the bill meets the face. And it's easy to cut too deep or too quick, so just take your time, because we really want some precision in this cut so that it matches up well with the corresponding cuts that we're going to put in the head, and we get a nice tight fit between the bill and the head that way. So you can see I'm taking different angles here just to remove pieces of wood at a time. And again, try to get a very accurate cut. I'm leaving the pencil line intact so that as I shape and sand the bill, we don't lose the basic shape of the pattern that we want to maintain in the carving, so that it projects well as a hooded merganser bill. Just working carefully on the tip there. Just a note there, you can see injuries occur when people try to flick away scrap. You know, when you've done this a lot, it's easy to forget and take a finger in there to flick away a piece of scrap. Always use a piece of wood so that your fingers don't get anywhere close to the blade. I'm mentioning that primarily for newer carvers that might not be used to the bandsaw. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing with the head. Again, I've got the head block cut to width, and I'm going to start by notching out that area where the bill meets the face. It's almost impossible to get a perfectly matched set here with the bandsaw. So just a note, after I make these cuts and get the two pieces, and I'll work with them to modify shapes just slightly so that we get a good tight fit between the bill and the face. One thing I like about this approach, as opposed to inserting a rectangular block, is I'll show you later, this method really establishes all of that complicated geometry around the bill of the merganser as it meets the face. And as we carve that down, all of that is clearly visible, so we don't have to do too much carving to create all of those surfaces where the upper and lower mandible meet the face on the merganser. And again, I'll show you that in more detail as we get further along in the carving. I'm going to speed the rest of this video up, just leaving the pencil mark and finishing these cuts. I'll make this cut where the head interfaces the body. This is a tucked head position, so I want this to be very accurate so it matches up well with the body. All right, I rough shaped the top-down pattern of the bill using the pattern and a coping saw. And I put a center line on the bill, and now you can kind of slide that in place. I've also got a center line on the head, so we'll want to line that up, get it positioned correctly, and epoxy that in place. And I always check to make sure, using the center line, that the bill maintains the center line as well, so we don't get a bill cocked left or right. Okay, I'll get that glued in, and then we can rough shape the head. All right, I'm using 2-part 5-minute DevCon epoxy. I'm going to use a nail because to spread this glue into some of these sharper areas and tighter areas, that point will really help in that regard. And I'm also going to mix in a little wood flour, a little dust from my belt sander and bandsaw and create a little bit of a fill with the wood dust mixed in, and that'll help fill in any gaps as we glue the bill to the head. So I'm just going to shake in some of the wood dust, try to remove any larger pieces if you see them. It's really not too critical. Make sure there's a good mix, and then I'm going to use the nail to spread the epoxy, make sure it gets down in all the deep cuts here. Do the same with the head. Right on the center line, we don't need glue outside of that area. Again, I'm forcing this mixture down into the deeper areas so that we'll get a good tight bond in there. Now I'm going to slide this in place, hopefully. And you can see it pushes that material out of the way, but it's also forming a good tight bond in there. I'm going to rock that back and forth until I'm sure I've got good coverage. And if you're missing an area, I've got way too much on this side, which I can use the nail again to make sure I'm forcing glue down all around this junction between the bill and the head and make sure there's a good bond there. You can always remove the glue later, but I want to have enough forced in there that we don't have a bunch of gaps. And now, before the glue sets, I need to make sure I get this thing centered correctly. I'm going to use my center line of the head. It looks like I need to move it over a bit. That looks pretty good. So we're on the center line. We'll let that dry or cure. Just another quick note, another reason I like this approach is all these mating surfaces between the bill and the cheek are already defined now on both sides. So it's kind of a time saver. I don't have to carve everything down and define where all of those edges meet the bill. That's already set at this point. While the head is still square, I'm going to go ahead and drill the eye locations on either side to give me guidance later. All right, I've got some pencil marks done, some layout work. And I wanted to talk about this because this is an example of where I can't use just a coping saw or the bandsaw to cut this angular shape from the top, because down here at the neck, this is kind of a puffed up area that I want to maintain width on. And if I just buzz through with a bandsaw here, I'm going to end up with too much wood taken out down here. So instead of doing that, I'm going to use my grinder and grind that area off, and then that'll allow me to keep this material down here that I want later. On the back side of the crest area, I can definitely bandsaw that off and not worry about it being a little narrow back here. I'm going to leave plenty of wood back here in the crest. The crest definitely narrows near the back and thins up, but I don't want it razor thin back there, so I'm just taking a nice angle from the back of the head to where the cheek meets the crest and removing that material quickly with the bandsaw. Now I'm going to use this 3/4 inch bullet nosed saber-tooth burr and very carefully work this angle down and match that planting line that we put on the top. And just a word of caution again, if you're not used to using this power equipment for carving, you have to keep your hands and fingers away from that burr to be safe. So maintain a firm grip like I'm doing here, and I'm taking that right down to where the cheek meets the bill. And now I'm working to angle that back, and you can see I've left that material around the neckline there because I'm going to go back and shape that little puffed up area. And by using the grinder here, we've maintained that material. I'm using the burr here to remove some of the glue without thinning up the bill too much. And now I'm going to very carefully round that breast area where the neck meets the breast. And begin to define that groove that kind of runs under the cheek of the bird. You can see I'm working to that planting line that I put on the neck and breast area below. I'm keeping this at normal speed and not speeding this up because I want you to see the speed that I'm working at. On a head like this, you really have to be careful. And I know I say that a lot, but I think it's important just to maintain safety. You've only got so much to hang on here to, and keep your hands out of the way. So you'll see me repositioning my hands all the time to keep them out of harm's way. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I've got that completed, and now I'm using a little bullet-shaped ruby bit, and I can use that to go in under this neck area and remove material. This is an area where if you use a burr in this area, it'll go fast, but oftentimes a burr will snag going against the grain, and I just like a ruby bit removes material in a more smooth fashion. Takes a little longer, but I can go back and forth and not worry about the bird jumping or snagging or rolling out of that area. So I'm just going to use this ruby bit. This is a medium grit ruby burr. People have asked me, Tom, why do you always use rubies? And I bought a lot of ruby bits when I was first starting carving, and they last a long time. Diamond is also good, and I have some diamond bits as well, and I kind of use them interchangeably. You can see this particular ruby bit has been worn pretty hard, but I'm still using it. I'm using that to remove a little of the glue again around the where the bill meets the face there, and really begin to define a little structure and shape to that area and tie into those angles. Cleaning up the glue there as well. That's another reason I'm using an older bit here, because the two-part epoxy really tends to fill up ruby bits quickly, and I'd rather be using an older bit to do that cleanup work here. It still takes the material off, but it gums up the ruby bit a little bit. You can see that definition now. Now I need to work on the notch area up above where it meets the bill. And this is a way that I clean off my ruby bits. I use some heat and friction just to take off some of the residual glue. Now I'm going to switch to this little cylindrical bit, and this again is a ruby or a diamond bit, and use that to define the notch above where the face meets the bill. So I'm just removing the tupelo wood and taking it down to where the holly has been inserted into the tupelo in that area. And then I'm going to use that bit to begin to clean up and define those areas where they meet the face. Again, removing some of the epoxy that's remaining there. I'll go ahead and speed this up. Okay, I've got this video sped up to 2 times, and I'll go ahead and show this because I'm just, again, cleaning up the glue and defining the shapes, beginning to round the areas as they meet the bill with this little ruby bit, and clean things up in general. Not working on any of the details at this point, just trying to make sure I have a good smooth interface between the bill and the face. Now I'm going to work to define the crown area, and I know the crown is 1 5/8 inches wide. So I've got that penciled in. You can see the cheek is penciled in as well. I'm going to remove this material with the bullet-nosed saber-tooth burr. This is a fine burr. I've mentioned before, especially on this detailed carving, I like the fine burr as opposed to the green coarse burr or medium burr because it takes a little longer, but I think it's a little safer. It doesn't snag wood as much as the more coarse burr does. Sorry for the video angle here, but I'm just removing wood from the side of the head, and we'll get a clearer view here in a second. Taking it down to that plan line and leaving the cheek intact. See, I'm working to that line. And now I'm going to do the same thing in back. And I'll definitely speed through this video in a second here, but I just wanted to show you some real time first. Because again, you don't have a lot to hang on to with a head like this. So you really need to take your time and not try to remove too much wood too fast. And now I'm going to round that cheek area once I have the crown at the proper width. I'm not rounding the crown yet because I want to make sure I have my eye set width at the proper width before I round the crown. It's just something I do. I like to get the eye width set, and then I feel comfortable rounding the crown after that. So I'm going to take the crown down like this on both sides and define the cheek area. And you can see I'm narrowing that crown in back, not again to a razor sharp point at this point, but I'll do the same on the other side. Okay, I've got the crown at the proper width and the cheeks kind of defined, and now I'm going to use this little flame-shaped ruby bit because I need to remove more material at the neckline here, and it's a pretty sharp bend, so I need this shape to get into that area and remove more wood so that we have a nice defined tucked head, chin on the breast type of position. And I'm using the side of that bit to round the area under the chin there. But you can see I'm digging in with that and taking material out so we begin to form more definition between the cheek as it rests on the breast area, breast and neck. This is actually a little puffed up area of the neck under the chin here. Now I'm just going to use the drum sander, and this is about 150 grit, and I'm just going to go over the entire carving at this point and smooth things out, take all the burr lines out and not remove too much material, but just begin shaping things up with this little 1/2-inch drum sander. I use this tool a lot, not only to smooth things out, but to do some shaping. You can see I'm actually doing some shaping of the bill with that sanding drum, as well as just smoothing everything out. That 2-part epoxy is heck on drum sanders like this. It'll fill your sander up real fast with resin, so I try to stay away from that area right now with this sanding drum. So I'll go ahead and speed this up. That way we can watch progress, but do it more quickly. So you can see I'm just using that sanding drum to get things rough, rounded, and shaped up. I'll do that over the entire head. Now I want to set the eye width, and I'm going to use that bullet-shaped ruby bit, or I've already done that actually, to set the eyes at the proper width and create a little bit of an eye groove. And once that's done, now I can round the crown because I know those eyes are positioned at the proper depth. And I've put a little bit, I didn't have to put too much of a groove in this particular bird. So now I'm just using the bullet-shaped saber-tooth burr, fine burr, and I'm going to round the head in general. And we'll speed through this part of the carving. Okay, I'm at 2 times speed here. You can see I'm just rough shaping everything. Again, I may take this crest and make it more narrow later as we add detail to the head. Right now I just want to get it rough shaped, and it's definitely more narrow than the rest of the head as it goes back to form that very distinctive crest, the Hooded Merganser. This particular pattern, I put a little hook in that crest. I really like that look. You can get all types of shapes to the head of a Drake Hooded Merganser, from a full-blown crest and hood to more of a tucked hood like this one is. It's just up to the individual carver what you're trying to portray and the position that appeals to you most. This is just a nice relaxed pose. All right, we have the head roughed out, and now I'm just gonna bandsaw the body. So I've got the side profile drawn on there, square lines drawn up so that we can match up the top down pattern. Trace that, and now we're ready to bandsaw the body. I always start by cutting the side profile first, and that way I maintain the top-down pattern intact on a piece of wood that we can tack back in place, and then cut the top-down pattern next. So just go at this slowly. You don't want to press the bandsaw too hard or too fast. And again, I'm trying to cut just outside of the line, so as I carve and smooth things up, we're still matching the original pattern. So I've cut that top piece intact, and I'll side that so that we can use it later for the top down cut. And now I'll speed this up just so you can see the rest of these cuts on the side profile. Just cutting the breast from the side. And now that area under the tail. All right. Now I've used that top scrap piece and tacked it back on so that I can use it as a template to cut the top-down view. And you just have to make sure that you've got it aligned properly, because it's easy to shift that top piece one way or the other. So just make sure it's carefully aligned before you tack it in place. And then we can go ahead and cut the top-down profile, and I'll speed through the rest of this. Okay, I'm at 2 times speed. There's a little bit of a notch area where the breast hits the side pocket on a Drake Merganser, so I'm just carefully defining that in these bandsaw cuts according to the pattern. Keeping my hands out of the way. So they're nowhere close to the blade. You can see that little notch area between the breast and the side pocket on both sides. There we go. Now we can remove the top scrap, get it out of the way, and do a little bit more layout work on the body before we do a little bit more band sawing. I like to put a center line back on the decoy just to keep that in mind. And I'm going to do a little bit of band sawing to take material off on both sides and semi-round the body, but in a very rough way. And also take a little material off down here to begin to form the rounded side pocket area. So I've got my bandsaw set at a 30-degree angle, and I'm going to keep the decoy flat on the table and just take this material off following my guideline very carefully, keeping my hands out of the way to give us a little bit of roundness under the side pocket and towards the belly area. And make sure you don't cut the tail area off while you're doing that. It's a little tip there. I've done that before. And same thing on this side. I'm going to keep these videos at real speed so you can see the speed I'm cutting at. Now I'm going to set the decoy on its side. We need to be very careful, but I'm going to take a 30-degree cut following my guideline. You can see I'm keeping my hand away from the blade in case the blade snags and starts to pull the bird down. Now, and again, I want to take another slice here. I'm resting the bottom of the decoy on the table, keeping my hands out of the way and just taking a little more material off. That's a cut you have to be very careful with because you don't have a flat area like you do here resting against the table that keeps the body very stable. I'm going to take that second angle slice here. I'm resting the bottom of the decoy on the table and just taking off another little slice so I don't have to grind that material off. That's about all I need to do on the body with the bandsaw. All right, everybody, that looks like a good place to stop session 1 on the Drake Hooded Merganser. We've got the head roughed out and the body bandsawed out. In the next session, we'll start detailing the head and installing the eyes, and probably in session 3, really get the body shaped up. Until next time, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to all of you.